watching On the Scene Network. I'm Daria Roy. On January 28th, we celebrate the 5th annual Medalist Talk Day to end the stigma on mental illness. We were on the scene at the original screening of Clara's Big Ride, documenting her 110-day bicycle journey in support of the cause. Let's talk to Clara.
I think a big part of why people don't get help is they just feel like if they quote-unquote admit it, it's just going to get worse and it's going to spiral downwards. But admitting it to yourself is the first step to getting help, and that's a big mistake that I made in not admitting it to myself.
What was the most difficult thing about the ride?
It was being in such a rush. It was only 110 days, over 100 communities, and everywhere we went, I didn't want to leave. Every event, I didn't want to leave because someone would have told me their story. I could see someone else waiting, and when you was riding up to 220 kilometers a day and so many events, there was never enough time. So that was the hardest part for me. It wasn't the riding. The riding was the part where I got to clear my mind and just kind of regroup and absorb everything I'd heard and seen and felt. That was so hard to leave.
Why do you think there is such a big stigma with mental illness?
In a lot of ways it's uncomfortable. It's a topic that's not that much fun to talk about, so it's not easy and it's not necessarily fun, and it's not necessarily sexy. One of the big problems we face with changing this conversation is how can we find answers when we're kind of still afraid of the question, and so that's what Bella's Talk Day is kind of all about, is just starting that conversation.
So how was your experience directing Clara's Big Ride?
Well, in some way, I've made quite a few films, and in a way this was not the most difficult film. In a way it was an easy film to make on one level, because we knew we were going to follow her ride. We knew early on that we wanted to reach out to some young people to tell their stories, and for that to be an essential ingredient for the film. And that was very difficult in a way, to ask people to sometimes say things for the very first time. And on film, it was a very bizarre thing, and very emotional. And I would have a list of questions, and sometimes I would just I realized these people are reaching into their hearts to tell the story, so I would just drop the papers and have this 2-hour conversation with them and try not to cry. It's very emotional.
So what's the best advice someone ever gave you?
Best advice anyone gave me?
Just in life, in general.
Probably, whatever you do, don't go into documentary filmmaking if you want to make a living. I'm not sure about advice. I think the most important thing for people is support. Support in the decisions they make, not to feel belittled, to be reinforced. I think nurturing is the important thing, more than advice.
That's it for this episode of On the Scene Network. I'm Daria Roy. Thanks for watching.